and welcome to the last video of CITS3004. We're finally here. In this particular video, we'll be discussing about exam details. Okay, so as usual, in line with all the other tests and exams that we did before, this is also going to be an open book exam. So you can take any non-electronic materials into your exam. Not exactly sure how it's going to work with ExamSoft, but that's what it is. Calculators are permitted. Typically, those has to be university approved with the stickers. The test will be worth out of 100 marks. Okay, your name and ID number should be written onto the cover page of the answer booklet if you're doing it on the paper. So I think I should have moved it down. Nevertheless, in all answers, this is critical. Be sure to provide clear and concise explanations of your reasoning. Okay, so this includes stating any assumptions that you have made as part of your solution as well. Okay, so no marks will be given for answers not directly relevant to the question. So you're talking some other stuff, you're not going to be given. And also you should carefully look at the number of marks allocated. Each mark will usually corresponds to each point you make as part of the question. Okay. Okay. And additionally, if you are doing it on paper, don't use pencil or red pen. Please use readable handwriting. Every year I struggle to read some handwriting, so please readable handwriting, please. You can use extra pages if necessary and so forth. Yeah. So let's have a look at a bit more structure. So there are 5 questions in total, but that's not really it. And each question has sub-questions, so it varies between 2 to 5 sub-questions. So I say if you count it that way, you'll have a bit more, I suppose. Right? Materials covered in 2020 exam is between weeks 1 and 10 inclusive, so everything between 1 and 10 can appear in your exam. It will contain mixture of practical, analytical, and theoretical questions, but not really coding questions. However, you should understand code snippets if you're given, or be able to write pseudocode if necessary, things like that. Okay, so I guess that's as much information I can give you about how the exam will probably look like. But if you have any other questions, you're welcome to send me an email to clarify. Okay. So now what we're going to do is have a look at some sample questions for you to understand about the style of the exam, what kind of answers you might be expected and things like that, right? So here's a sample question. We first need to understand the background situation. Vodafone Mobile has a web page that allows you to top up a prepaid account online. Okay, and this page has a text box for entering the mobile number. You can choose the payment option, amount to top up, credit card details, autofill check, and so forth. So the interface kind of looks like this. So this is what we are working with. Okay, so we have this particular interface that we are dealing with, and we're going to answer the following sub-questions associated with this one. Okay, let's have a look at the first. Number 1, develop an attack tree for Vodafone top-up scenario with at most 8 nodes and at least depth of 3. So, and that is including the root node. Okay, so firstly, this is worth 8 marks, and it says at most 8 nodes. So it will likely be that each node you create will be worth 1 mark as long as they're valid, right? But you also need to make it a depth of 3, so if you don't satisfy these conditions, you probably lose marks because of that. It doesn't say a particular attack scenario. That means you can choose your root node given any assumptions you want to create, right? But there's no limitations on what root node can be, and typically the root node is the attack goal, right? So we need to specify an attack goal. So if you look at this, maybe an attack goal is to gain a root privilege in the server side, or top up your own account maliciously without paying. That can be another attack goal. So there's lots of different attack goals you can create from here. So you put that in first. and then see how you can achieve that. So the attack tree is basically you are subdividing the goal into an atomic achievable action that you can carry out to satisfy the goal. Okay, so we can do that. So for instance, maybe use stolen credit cards to top up your phone. That can be a note. Yeah. Number 2, describe mitigation techniques for the identified attacks from the attack tree you generated from the previous question, right? So now you have specified different attack actions to satisfy the attack goal, the root node. Then here is to describe mitigation techniques for some of the boxes. It says 4 marks, so typically you will want to explain different mitigation techniques, and if the mitigation techniques is complex, you probably want to explain how it works and how effective it might be. Okay, so if the defense techniques are simple, you probably want to provide like 4 different ways of doing it. So it doesn't say you have to provide mitigation technique for one of the boxes, so you can provide each one for different boxes, for instance. Yeah, and you need to make 4 valid points. Okay, moving on to next question. The denial of service can be conducted using different techniques. Discuss the major differences between reflection attacks and amplification attacks. Okay, so this one is actually quite a general question, not related to the previous one, and it's just trying to differentiate between a reflection attack and amplification attack. So if you think back or review your notes on reflection and amplification, basically both of them have different set of requirements to carry this out. Okay, and you can discuss these points here. 4 valid points for 4 marks. Okay. Next items, there are 4 phases of preventing DOS attacks. If you have enough resource to invest only in one phase, which one would it be? Explain your answer. So this one is 6 marks, and there are 4 phases. So if you said you selected one and justified, you probably can get like 2, maybe 3 marks depending on the depth of explanation. Okay. Because there are 6 marks, you really want to compare your choice to others and why the other phases are not suitable or not worthy of investment compared to the one that you have selected. So that's the comparative evaluation you need to provide to get full 6 marks here. Okay. Instead, if that was say 2 marks, and then the first approach would have satisfied. So select one and reason why. However, this is worth more than that, so you need to provide some comparisons and justifications to your reasons. Okay, next one, using the Virginia cipher, encode the secret message, "You're welcome," using the key choice. I hope by now you should be able to do this given the table to use. Okay, describe the weaknesses of the Virginia cipher. Okay, I believe that should be quite straightforward by now as well. Okay, I'll leave that to you. 2 computers are exchanging highly sensitive data that are transmitted in small blocks. Okay, so that's describing our setup, 16 or less bytes. And all messages are independent. Great. So there are no overlapping stuff. Is it safe to use ECB cipher mode? Explain your answer and clearly state your assumptions. So this is about understanding the pros and cons of ECB and whether it fits into the context of this question, right? So it's going to be independent blocks. So if you provide 2 same messages, it's going to end up having 2 same ciphertexts, and that was the weakness. So if you understand the context of the question well, you should be able to answer this quite easily. Okay, next question, explain how SQL injection attacks can happen. So hopefully, this one is also quite straightforward, and as you can see, it's only worth 2 marks. And not just the interface, but you need to understand the backend stuff as well. Discuss the difference between in-band and out-of-band types of SQLI by comparing the SQLI techniques needed. Okay, so well, in-band you can get direct access to the outputs, right? So when we're doing our SQLI lectures, most pretty much everything was in band. You get to see the reaction straight away. Out of band, on the other hand, you don't get to see how the database responds explicitly. Rather, you need to deduce what it might be doing. Okay, and so in that direction, you can provide more explanation to get the rest of the 4 marks. The SQL database contains the table, user table. The interface program sends the SQLite query. That query write an SQLite to only return the entry where the username matches root. So hopefully this one is also quite straightforward. We have also given some examples during the lecture, so you just have to reformat that to fit into this context where the username matches root. Okay, so basically that's all the example ones I'll go over, and I don't want to just blast sample solutions because that's not a good way of learning. I don't want to constrain sample answers to be the only answers. As mentioned earlier, depending on your assumptions, if it's not given, if the problem scope hasn't been fully defined, you can always provide reasonable assumptions to answer your questions. Do note that if you provide unreasonable assumptions, you can lose marks for that. Okay, so in summary, please take time to review the unit. Reviewing some labs would also help with technical questions, as mentioned, and you are welcome to ask questions via email or come by my office, setting up some meeting times beforehand. Okay, so that's pretty much it for going over the example questions. And those of you who are interested in thinking of doing honors or masters and interested in some of the research questions discussed in the lectures, well, you can contact me to discuss further. Okay, otherwise, thank you for taking this unit. I hope you all the best with the exam, future studies, and beyond. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Spare 5 minutes to do a unit survey as well. All right, that's it, folks. Bye.